Welcome back. I'm Montana Senate President Pro-Tem Ken Bogner. I'm here with the President of the Montana Senate, Matt Regier, and we are going to talk about property tax relief today. So it's an exciting conversation. It is the issue we probably heard about most on the campaign trail.
Ready, set, showtime. Welcome to the Montana Majority Report. Quick, transparent, and informative. Get the inside scoop on policies, people, and decisions shaping our state, all in less time than it takes to pour your morning coffee. Stay tuned. Montana starts right here.
Welcome back. I'm Montana Senate President Pro-Tem Ken Bogner. I'm here with the President of the Senate, Matt Regier. And today we are going to be talking about property taxes. It is the issue that we heard on the campaign trail that come up over and over and over about people's concerns with the growing cost and how it is affecting their pocketbook when it comes to property taxes. So
I had a primary election and a general election, so I got to do a lot of doors this go around, and that is the number one thing that people said is property taxes, especially up in the Flathead, are way too high. But you hear it from across the state. I mean, there's a lot of our colleagues that have said property taxes are the thing that's killing them.
It really is. And so let's start. What are property taxes?
That's a great place to start because I think there's a lot of misnomers on this. When you break it down, there's really three drivers to property tax. And one is us, the state government, you and I's job. We had taken 95 mills, which was $300 and some million last year. So that's a big chunk that goes to the state. We turn around and give it to education, but we're a driver in it. The local governments obviously are drivers. They set the mills. That drives a lot of like in my neck of the woods, I believe 40% is driven by local government, and then the voters. The voters vote on mill levies, maintenance levies. We just had in Flathead, City Kalispell had a safety levy that we put on, which is going to increase significantly our property taxes, and that was done by the voters. So three different drivers to property taxes.
Yeah, and one thing that surprised me was that the state only collects less than a quarter of property taxes. They're at 17%, and the voted levies and local governments are 83%.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, state's a small part, but I think there's a little bit of grind here between the state, and we've seen that with the exec and the county commissioners, a little bit of a rub, which is fine. But I think that we as state officials here in the Senate, we need to say, hey, that we are a player in this, and we can control some of it, even through just regulations. How does voter levies play out, that kind of thing?
Yeah, and you mentioned on the campaign trail, people were bringing this up. They want the state legislature to do something. And we've heard a couple proposals coming into session. Governor Gianforte had a property tax task force.
There it is.
And we also read an op-ed from Senator Glimm, who proposed Senate Bill 90, which addresses property taxes. So let's talk about those proposals. One is the homestead exemption. Is that how you call it?
Yep.
That came from the governor's property tax task force.
Smooth.
It's a mouthful. Can you talk to us about what is that homestead exemption?
Yeah, the homestead exemption really it increases everybody's property tax, but then lowers all the primary residents. So if you're a Montana homeowner, it's your primary residence, then you will see a drop of 15 to 20, 15%, about 15% on your primary residence. But that means all the other homes, then their property tax burden has increased. So that is catching. I know I heard the governor say that it catches a lot of out-of-staters with second homes, and it does. The problem with that I see right away is you're going to catch a lot of Montanans with second homes too. You're going to catch a lot of ranches over on the eastern side that the parents have owned the ranch, but they've also got then the three kids living on the ranch with them, and they've only got one primary residence, so their property taxes are going to skyrocket on the other three homes that technically they're renting to their kids. So it provides some problems. There's some question marks with it. It's going to be tough I think, tough for any Republican to finish this session and stand up at a town hall and tell a Montanan that, yes, we did raise your property taxes, actually, but don't worry, we cut your neighbors. So your neighbor's okay, but you just saw a huge increase in yours. So there's some question marks to that whole homestead concept.
And the governor did make comments about his proposal in that task force, and we can run that clip so you can hear exactly what he says.
For my part, I firmly believe that we should move ahead with the homestead exemption to give preference to Montana residents on a primary home. That'll provide good long-term relief. It will also ensure that out-of-staters who don't live here, don't pay income taxes here, and own second homes here pay their fair share, not only for our schools, but law enforcement, roads and bridges, emergency response. And I'm glad to see the task force included that as one of the recommendations.
So we heard there the governor, he makes a good point. There's a lot of out-of-staters coming and buying second homes, and people feel like they should come. If you're going to come into Montana, you should cover the costs of needing the services that are required for an increased population, whether that's law enforcement, et cetera.
Yeah, well, I mean, and you're right. It makes a good point. I'm not going to stand up for the Justin Timberlakes that have a bunch here, just use this as a playground and then leave. They're really not part of our community or state. But the problem then, and what the governor doesn't talk about, is he's casting such a wide net that there are a lot of Montanans with second homes that could even very well be priced out of them if we shift such an incredible burden onto them. There was a property tax task force. I'm not as smooth as you on that one, or Pro-Tem, but they did have. If we could run that soundbite too, they explicitly said that this is going to be a huge burden shift to those second homes, which a lot of Montanans have.
Just one thing I mentioned in our subcommittee we might include, just in addition to all the information, is just showing roughly the magnitude of the increase for the residential property that's not owner occupied. And I think in our model it was about 38%. We already mentioned that it will go up there as that's how we're getting the decrease for everyone else. But
he said it right there perfectly. It's the magnitude of what we're shifting to the other homeowners. So that's what we're going to have to debate as this concept goes through the legislative process. Are we going to shift that magnitude to some Montanans that have those second homes?
On the other hand, we do have legislators that are introducing their own, alternatives to property tax relief. One of those is Senator Glimm. He chairs the Senate Finance Committee, and he, before the session started, wrote an op-ed about his vision of what he wanted to see done with property tax and the reforms there. Can you talk a little bit about Senate Bill 90 that he introduced?
Yeah, you bet. There's always multiple ways to skin the cat, as they say. And this Senate Bill 90, it does take that same concept that the governor's tax group had of out-of-staters, but we currently have out-of-staters paying here in Montana, and that we do that with the lodging tax. Right now, hotels collect about 7-8% on our lodging. Some of that goes to the general fund, and also rental cars, paid by a lot of tourists, pay both those taxes. Some Montanans, but a lot of tourists pay those taxes. And right now, they're just going to the general fund. And Senator Glimm, in his bill, he's just looking to take that money that goes to the general fund and give it back to the primary homeowners in Montana. So they would be seeing 400, 500, 600, depending on how much money we can collect on that. Just a off the top credit on everybody's tax bill.
Everybody in the state.
Every primary resident Montanan. So on their primary home,
Great.
they would see that.
Great. And you talked a little bit about maybe some of the things that the homestead exemption, who that would affect. Who would this affect the most, maybe negatively?
Yeah, so that's what the brilliant of this, it doesn't affect anybody negatively. It stays, as far as property taxes go, everybody stays the same except for primary residents. They'll see a credit on their tax bill. So who's getting shorted on this is the state general fund. And I would argue that the lodging tax that's paid for by tourists coming to stay in a hotel in Miles City, that tourist then using all the infrastructure, using the police, the streets, and right now that burden is 100% on the backs of the property tax homeowner. And so that shouldn't be that way. I'd say even if Senator Glimm's bill doesn't go, I would argue that lodging tax does not belong in the state general fund. It belongs back in the local area where these tourists are putting all the pressure, expense pressure. And right now it's been shouldered by 100% burden by the homeowners.
Yeah, and tourism doesn't seem to be slowing down very much.
No, we got Yellowstone out there doing all that work for us. And right now, too, I'm going to throw that in here, Pro-Tem. We got, a billboard campaign in Chicago that some of this bed tax is paying for. I think Montanans across the state would say, hey, we have been found out. People are here. There's lines, car lines outside Yellowstone, outside Glacier Park. People looking to get in here, and we're still advertising on that while our property taxes are skyrocketing. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, people all around the world know how great Montana is now.
Exactly.
There's no need to advertise that.
Exactly.
So what do you see any issues with these proposals or any other proposals not passing the legislature? This seems to be a priority for the majority, getting property tax relief.
Yeah.
Is that going to happen?
I do, and this would be, I'm curious to hear your take on this too, because I see the problem of us not doing anything. I think that's the big danger this session. If we walk out of here at the end of this session not having moved the needle on property tax, I think that's us dropping the ball.
Yeah, and I think it's not just the actual property taxes, but it's those things that make the taxes go up.
Yeah,
you can talk a little bit about what those are?
Yeah, like we started out with the voters. The voters, they drive a lot of the property tax, which is totally fine. I think that's the way it should be, the voters driving it. But right now, it's 30% of the voters can turn out. If you have 30% of the voters turning out, and so that would be just 16% of them, that would be the majority of them, would be driving the property taxes for 100%. When you have a minority that's controlling that type of spending, that seems a little out of whack. So something we can do at the state regulatory-wise is just even to make the levies fair. Another thing is sunsetting levies. I mean, why is it that I'm paying for a levy in Kalispell that was voted on 40 years ago? That community is totally different from 40 years ago. We should bring that back up every so often.
Yeah, look at those again.
Hey, everybody has moved, and it's a whole new community. Do you guys want to keep doing this, whatever this is, expense on your property tax? I think that's something that could improve just the justice and equity of property taxes.
Right. One thing we've heard about across the state is TIF districts as well.
Yes.
And how they're being abused and what we could do to reduce the burden on people in the communities that pay into these TIFs, that the money might not stay in those districts. You know, we need to make sure that there's mechanisms there that the money stays where it's supposed to, and that they don't create these balloons that keep, growing and growing and growing.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up too. And it's for those of you out there in Montana that are big on education funding, TIF districts are really a way to get around that. They're a useful tool to clean up blight in your. But when you start cutting all that out, and what is blight? I mean, we haven't defined that. I know there's a bill this session to define blight, which to me is a good starting point for TIF. But cities have found that, well, hey, let's just cut out the schools, cut out the state on this, and they cut out those fundings, and they just take all the money to use in their own local area for TIF, which it's shortening the schools. And when you abuse a tool like TIF that way, you're really shorten the kids. So.
Yeah, these tools need to be made and used for what they were designed for, and not abused, like you said.
Exactly.
We're going to see many other proposals on how we can continue to reduce taxes. But that's what's great about this conversation is that either way, we're debating lowering taxes, which is great for the people of Montana.
Absolutely. They send a majority in the Senate of Republicans. They send a majority of Republicans in the House. We got a Republican governor. Now the argument is how do we shrink the size and scope of government and take less money from the people of Montana? It's just a matter of where. That's awesome. That's an awesome argument to have.
It really is. So it's a win-win, in my opinion, for the state of Montana and why they sent Republicans here to be the majority. It's exciting.
Absolutely.
You'll follow along with all the proposals for the property tax, and not just property tax, tax relief in general, on our podcast here, the Montana Majority, and make sure you sign up for the email newsletter. It has our proposals in there as well and where they're at in the process. So, Mr. President, thank you for your discussion, your ideas and insight into what is going on in the legislature in terms of property taxes.
Thank you, Mr. Pro-Tem. Can't wait to come back and hear the next issue.
All right, great. See you all next time.